My name is Ginny Isaacson, and I'm the conference chair, and I'd like to welcome you to this session of our conference. We'll start with an opening prayer by Emily Eskelson. She's organized all the CLE credits that we've had today, and we're very grateful for that. And then after that, I'll direct the rest of the program.
Our most gracious Father in heaven, we are so thankful to be here today as lawyers and friends, and we are grateful for the things that we have been learning and the things that we have yet to learn. We earnestly seek to build thy kingdom and within our own spheres, and we pray that thou wilt inspire us and help us to grow in wisdom and in inspiration of what we can do. We ask thee to bless the speakers tonight, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Well, we would like to thank all of you for your attendance at the conference this year. We need to especially thank our sponsors and our speakers, and this conference really wouldn't happen without their help, as well as the conference committee and all the organizing that happens to make this all flow smoothly. My byword has been that we want this conference to be memorable for all the right reasons, and so far I think we're on a good track. For those who don't know, this is the 8th joint lawyer-student conference that we've had for the Reuben Clark Law Society. When we opened registration, we anticipated about 400, maybe on the high side, 450 registrants. And so as the early registration deadline loomed, we kept logging on and watched the numbers go up and up and up. And we ended with about 800 registrants, conference registrants, which includes lawyers, guests, law students. And so we were amazed. This has made for some last-minute challenges. Where we expected 60 people, maybe for our capital tour, we ended up needing to scramble to get tickets for 400. We thought we might all squeeze in here for this session, and we ended up needing not just one overflow room, but 2. And I really apologize for all the inconvenience that has caused with having to squish and squeeze, but it's been fun to get to know each other. It reminds me a little bit of the movie of The Field of Dreams, and Judge Bryson earlier today used a baseball analogy, so I am too. Kevin Costner is told, if you build it, they will come. And he plows his field, he builds the baseball diamond, and then the legends of the game came and people came and watched. So we organized this conference and planned it, and you came. But it's we're so grateful that you did come to hear so many of our Law Society legends. It's thrilling to be part of this historic event. I think this is the largest gathering of LDS law students and attorneys outside of Utah ever. So it's a historic thing. Not that it is a race, but I was secretly hoping to have more attorneys and law students gathered here on the East Coast than they did for the conference out in Salt Lake. We didn't quite make it, but it was very close. So we have 625, it might even be a little bit more than that, attorneys and law students gathered here from 30 states. Law students came from over 60 different schools. We had 850 people attend the Rexley lunch today, and that includes the conference registrants plus some of the local chapter and the local bar here. We appreciate the sacrifice that so many of you made to be here this weekend. There's a great spirit that comes from a gathering of like-minded people, and I hope that you've felt the power of that through this sessions. So I'll announce the program. For this session, we'll hear first from Jeff Bradford. He's a law student at the University of Michigan Law School. He's our student chapter's board chair. Then Doug Bush, the international chair of the Law Society, will speak to us. And then we'll have the privilege to hear from Elder Holland. Our closing prayer will be offered by Randy Wood. He's a law student at George Washington and also part of the conference committee. Then after that, I would like to invite all of you to join us for a reception that will be held in the Ho-Tung building next door. We're going to have live music, and it's going to be a party to celebrate the 25th anniversary. The student event will be right after that, and they can meet at about 7:45 at the security desk there in Ho-Tung if you want to walk up together. And then our Saturday session starts early back here, 8:30 tomorrow morning. So Jeff.
Thank you, and good evening. As Ginny mentioned, my name is Jeff Bradford. I'm a third-year student at the University of Michigan Law School, and I'm also serving as this year's chair of the Student Chapters Board. On my first day of law school, I was riding the city bus into school, and the woman next to me started engaging me in conversation. I learned that her name was Alice, and that she worked as a patient advocate at the university hospital. This means that she works with hospital administrators to lobby or fight for the rights of patients, not as a doctor or an attorney, but as a concerned third party. Before long, she was railing against the doctors at the university hospital, telling me that she thought that they were insensitive to the needs of their patients and only really interested in money. Calmly, I let her know that my wife is actually a doctor at the university hospital, and that I knew from personal experience that many of them cared deeply for their patients. Sensing that she might have offended me, she quickly settled on another target, one that she must have assumed we surely would agree on. Well, you know who's really the worst? The lawyers. They don't care about anyone or anything. They're only interested in the bottom line for the hospital. They're the real villains, if you ask me. Calmly again, I let her know that I was on my way to my first day of law school. As I recall, our conversation didn't go much further than that. I think it ended rather abruptly, and I was very grateful that I was on a bus and could quickly get off. I share that story because Alice's comments reflect a common attitude that goes back to before the time of Christ. Many people feel that those that practice law are inherently amoral or immoral and without principles. For that reason, I am deeply grateful to be a member of a society that was organized around the proposition that lawyers and law students should promote fairness and virtue founded upon the rule of law. A society that believes that we can embrace religious ideals because of and not in spite of our chosen profession. As law student members, we are grateful for the support and examples that we receive from our attorney members. The role models and guidance that we receive from you are irreplaceable, vital, as we make pivotal decisions about the kinds of practitioners that we hope to become. In an uncertain job market, we're grateful for your support and encouragement. When I first reached out to the firm that I'll ultimately be going back to after law school, the first contact I made was a member of the Law Society. He was generous with his time and his advice. His mentorship was absolutely essential for me in my ability to receive and secure employment. Gratefully, I didn't do anything too embarrassing over the summer to fumble the opportunity that he provided. But as I spent time working there, I learned something much more important. I learned that this particular Law Society member was very admired by his peers. He was thought of as a hard worker and a very capable attorney, but beyond that, also a person of integrity. Someone who was able to fulfill his obligations to his employer, but also to his family and his church service. He paved a path that I hope to follow. The Student Chapters Board is diligently working to help grow the Law Society so that more students can have the opportunity to interact with our attorney members. This year, we've already seen several chapters form, and we hope to see several more before our term ends. Right now, we're working with students in places, for example, such as Panama and Brazil. We're also in contact with existing chapters in countries throughout the world, including Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, and other parts of Central and South America. Our training and our experience differ wildly, but we're united in our common commitment to the Law Society's vision. On behalf of student members of the Law Society, thank you for your support and your fellowship. I invite the attorney members here to reach out to students and to involve us in your activities, to take advantage of our enthusiasm and our capacity and desire to serve. Working together, I'm confident that we can grow the Law Society and fulfill its mission. not only will that help to soften the hearts of people like Alice, it will also help us come together and come closer to our eternal lawgiver, even our advocate with the Father. Thank you.
So my job is to help you all understand the history of the Law Society as we celebrate our 25th anniversary. The Law Society began as an idea that was discussed by Ralph Hardy and then Dean Bruce Hafen of the BYU Law School. They recognized that there would be great value in having an organization such as this, where lawyers of faith, regardless of the school they had attended, coming together. In part, it would help support the brand new school there at BYU, or recent school at BYU. And in part, it would help provide an environment in which young lawyers could be mentored by more senior lawyers who were lawyers of faith. So back in the 1980s, those discussions were held. A beautiful pamphlet was eventually produced, and I just wanted to read a little bit out of the back of it about an event that took place, which will explain a little bit why Elder Holland's here with us tonight. Following those meetings with Dean Hafen, Elder Hardy came out here and decided to put the theory into practice. So it says, in 1987, the law school sponsored a series of programs to celebrate the bicentennial of the United States Constitution. As the capstone of that celebration, 50 graduates of the school and their spouses and other family members traveled to Washington, D.C., where the graduates' admission to the bar of the United States Supreme Court was moved by Rex Lee. That evening, the new admittees and their spouses joined with members of the bar from the Washington area at the first annual dinner of the Washington, D.C. chapter of the J. Reuben Clark Law Society. Elder Hardy put together a program that was labeled the J. Reuben Clark Law Society. And we have a little visual up there for you. The planning committee, as it indicates, was Elder Hardy and Robert Barker, Jay Bybee, Linda Gould. Linda, did you make it in here? There you are, Linda Gould. Why don't you stand up, Linda, so everybody can see you. Okay, I'm going to have to cue you on when to clap because I'm going to say a lot of names, so we'll be here. We'll be here a long time otherwise, okay. So Linda Gould was there, Bill Ingersoll, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us tonight, but he helped sponsor that lovely lunch you had, so you can thank him for paying for lunch. Brent Israelson, Jim Tate, who's up here where's Brother Tate? Oh, in the back. I got a seat down here for you. And Jim Tate were the planning committee. Several members of faculty came out. Today, Linda prayed for you, and that was because we were trying to make an effort at trying to recreate the program a little bit. Obviously, there were some challenges there, unless we wanted to invoke some spiritual presence from heaven, since some of these good folks have unfortunately passed away. But Elder Hardy's here with us tonight. Ralph, would you stand up for us? Brother Meekum was on the program. Elder Hardy conducted it. Elder Carmack from the 70 was there, and President Holland was there. And that's one of the reasons why we invited him to come out and join with us here, because we thought that'd be a very fitting tribute. Not only was he the president of the university when the Law Society was created, and obviously had to have his endorsement, but he also came out and helped inaugurate this event. And since we were coming back here to celebrate our 25th anniversary, we thought it'd be very fitting to have him here. We invited Elder Hafen to come, and Elder Holland, you'll be happy to know that he's extremely obedient and responded that the temple department has asked him not to travel outside his temple district while he's the temple president. So it's a big, just not big enough. Of course, Rex Lee was there, and you heard a great deal about the enormous reputation he continues to enjoy and the influence he has for good for this society and LDS lawyers and law students in general, to be honest. I have the privilege every year of sending out an email to the prior Rex E. Lee Advocacy Award recipients. And as you heard today, they are a very distinguished group, and they're obviously a very busy group. They probably collectively are more active in the Supreme Court bar than anyone else other than the solicitor's office, and in fact, some of them are in the solicitor's office. So, but what impresses me is how promptly they respond year after year with nominations for people to receive the award because of their respect for Rex Lee. And I just think it's a great tribute to him, how truly honored they are to have received an award in his name. So that was a lot of fun, and that's where we were 25 years ago. In 1988, there was an organizational meeting to formally put together the Law Society. They produced this beautiful brochure, and the first chair, the founding chair, whose vision really created this society was Elder Ralph Hardy. Elder Hardy, would you stand up for just a minute? Now you can clap, okay? Thank you. During Elder Hardy's tenure, they created this beautiful brochure at the law school, and I'll just, we keep saying the law school, and I apologize for that. I realize, the Law Society has tried very, very, very hard to say that this is an organization for law students and attorneys no matter where you went to school. Sometimes it's hard to escape the reference to the law school when you're talking about the Law Society, because really, we had no money as a law society. And so brochures like this did not come out of our pockets. This was paid for because the then Dean Hafen decided to spend his law school budget on this kind of recruiting materials and to go out and create such a society. And so we owe a great deal of gratitude and a great debt to the BYU Law School. And so I hope you're not offended by that. They have seen the big picture. They accept that even though this creates competition for them, I should probably have Bill come up here, but I won't, because we won't have any time left if he does. But Brother Atkin, is it true story that ASU asked you to form a chapter of the Law Society down there?
No, but they asked me to donate the money.
Oh, okay. All right, well, anyway, the story I heard was they wanted a chapter of the Law Society down there so they could more effectively recruit LDS law students to ASU. And the school, the BYU Law School, has accepted that and endorsed that because they recognize the big picture. And so forgive our shorthand reference to them, but they produced this beautiful brochure, and Ralph Hardy and others went out and recruited some great people. I probably won't be able to find it fast enough here, but the original Law Society board, some of them are actually here. So I'll just read off their names real quick. There was Wilfred Anderson, Gary Anderson, Everett Benton, Joseph Cannon, Val Christensen, Paul Gilbert, Ralph Hardy, Douglas Higham, Bill Ingersoll, Brent Israelson, Dale Kimball, Michelle Mitchell, Bill Mussman, Nancy Stevenson, Van Sluten now. Nancy, you want to stand up? Are there any of those other people here? And Nancy's here, and of course we've recognized Ralph. These were the Monty Stewart, Judith Thomas, and John Welch were the original board of the Law Society. And they went out and established chapters, many of them in their cities. And so in some of the major cities in the U.S., we began the Law Society 25 years ago. Some other things that happened while Ralph Hardy was the chair was, of course, they had to put things together like bylaws, and that was when the Clark Memorandum, which existed, was again the school and the law school at BYU and its generosity began to distribute the Clark Memorandum as a publication of the society. This is an award-winning publication that many of you I know have enjoyed over the years, and it's many great articles, and that became an official publication jointly produced by the Law Society and the law school. Okay. If you're going to clap, you have to clap for the guy that puts it together, okay? So Scott, you want to stand up? Scott Cameron. Scott Cameron has served as the executive director of the Law Society for a long time, 23 years. So almost as long as the Law Society's been around, Scott's been the executive director, with a little hiccup in there where he decided to go be a mission president. But in any event, aside from that, he's been the executive director, is the institutional memory of the Law Society, and we're just very honored that he's here with us also tonight. And yes, he is the editor of the Clark Memorandum. Does that get your title correct?
Executive editor now.
Oh, executive editor.
Wise does a far better job.
Okay. Anyway, so some great things happened. Our next chair of the Law Society was Gary Anderson, who served from 1992 to 1995. Gary unfortunately can't be with us here. He's out in California. He wanted to be here. He was excited to hear about our anniversary celebration. Gary spent a lot of his time and energy as a chair trying to recruit senior attorneys, really experienced attorneys, into the Law Society so that there would be mentors for younger attorneys in these chapters. Gary also worked on expanding the society to more chapters from the original ones that were created. And he also encouraged the chapters to have an annual event each year to sort of be a nucleus around which the chapters could build. Bud Jones, would you stand up? Bud Jones was the next chair of the Law Society from 1995 to 1997. Now, Bud, is it true you're from Canada? A long time ago. So Bud, of course, being Canadian, decided there ought to be chapters of the Law Society in Canada. Is that right? Yeah. So we started to have international expansion of the Law Society under Bud. We had 2-year limits imposed on our chairs so they wouldn't stick around forever. And very significantly, actually, during Bud's term, Rex Lee passed away. Now, the connection, one of the great connections there is that he was your law partner, as I recall, down in Arizona. Of course, Bud went on to become the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, and his prestige and reputation added greatly to the society. Thank you, Bud. Ralph, would you stand up? Ralph Mabey. Sorry, we have 2 Ralphs that were chairs, so we have to distinguish. Ralph Mabey came on board. Ralph worked really hard at trying to have some outreach for the Law Society, to reach out to other faith-based organizations and to really help the Law Society see its vision as a public service organization. And so he did a lot of that. Another really significant thing that was part of that outreach is we did not have a chapter of the Law Society prior to Ralph in Salt Lake. There was, for some of you might appreciate, a little tension about having an organization closely affiliated with BYU opening up shop amongst the alumni of the U of U in Salt Lake. And so it was a delicate moment, but they were able to help the folks up there in Salt Lake see the wisdom and the vision of the Law Society, and so we started a chapter there with Ralph's good help. He also organized a law professors group, which was helpful to the Law Society, and they started working on a new mission statement, which is, of course, the one you've heard repeated over and over again here at the conference, which I find to be an incredibly inspired statement. It doesn't limit the Law Society to a particular faith, but it talks about religion. It doesn't limit the Law Society to a particular school, but talks about public service and integrity and the rule of law. And those are all things which have turned out to be really very inspired. When the Supreme Court made rulings that impacted on faith-based organizations on campuses, we had no problems with our student chapters, which now are at approximately 100 different law schools, continuing to exist because their bylaws refers to our mission statement, which suggested no particular need to pledge any affiliation to any particular religion, but still promoted the idea of being a faith-based organization. So it's a great mission statement, and we owe Ralph a great debt of gratitude for it. Marsh Tanner was our next chair. Marsh was actually going to be here. He had his registration in hand and travel plans, but unfortunately an illness has prevented him from joining us tonight. But Marsh wanted us to know that his single greatest achievement as the chair of the Law Society was he recruited, with the suggestion of some others, he recruited Bill Atkin, which brought in a affiliation with the Office of General Counsel of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which, of course, has been an enormous blessing to the Law Society. Just to show a little bit why that's the case, would all those who are here because they work with or affiliated with the Office of the General Counsel please stand up? All right, so you can see that as we started to do things, having this great body of people who represented the church throughout the world on our team was very instrumental and has helped us both expand internationally as well as have a great deal of other support. So that, of course, brings us to Bill Atkin. Bill, would you stand up? So this is... Now, we'll have Elder Holland plug his ears at this point because I don't know what his association is with the dispensation of tithings group. But Bill brought in some great resources. It's something as simple as being able to join together weekly on a telephone conference call back in his tenure for the Law Society leadership was just incredibly instrumental to regularizing and providing leadership and direction for the Law Society. And because of Bill's affiliation with the Office of General Counsel, he was able to put those kind of resources into the Law Society. And it was those and in many, many other ways as just a small example of what he did to help us out. I probably should be keeping up with my slideshow here. Somewhere, I think I skipped over briefly, but I think in the two groups before, two successors to Bill, we started an annual leadership training conference in every fall. There were some other meetings, but we got much more regularized about it and formalized. That was a great development in the Law Society. One of the great things Bill did was he started a broadcast, using the church satellite system, started an annual broadcast for the Law Society. And this has been very inspiring and uplifting for the society because our speakers have included President Faust, President Packer, Elder Oaks, Elder Cook, Elder Christofferson. And so we've been able to distribute throughout the entire Law Society inspiring and uplifting messages from these prophets, seers, and revelators. And it's just been terrific. Bill was also very instrumental in helping us kind of reach out to students more. And I know he worked a lot trying to create a series of lessons that law students could use, kind of like institute lessons in their groups on their campuses. And so the students started to become much more engaged with the Law Society and with the chapters that we had. Our next chair was Lou Kramer from 2003 to 2005. Lou, would you stand up? Everybody knows Mr. Kramer. Let's give him a big round of applause. With a little help from Nancy, Lou kind of created a system while he was chair where we had formal chapters, recognized chapters amongst the students of the Law Society. And so they had to apply for admission as a chapter, and we got a little better handle on the students. And we created all these student chapters. We also had another significant development. HL wouldn't come up here, but HL, you want to stand up for 1 second for me? So this creative young man, and I forgot, I just blanked your name. Zeke, is he here by any chance? Zeke and HL were students at Harvard, and they decided, hey, why don't we get all the LDS law students around the country to come out here to Harvard and have a meeting with us? Well, about that time, I'd been bugging Lou about, hey, why don't we have all the lawyers get together? And the lawyers are always a little slower. It's probably because we do things by committees or something. But in any event, HL and Zeke just reached out on their own, created this terrific student conference. About 100 students from around the country showed up to Harvard. I'll just never forget sitting there, and they went around the room and asked everybody why they were there, and the kid next to me said, I just wanted to find out if the students at Harvard really were smarter than me. I probably should have said, well, I think they are, but anyway. But I didn't. What a great evening that was. Just to give you a sense of the program they put together up there. Now Justice Kagan, as I recall, kind of started the conference off, and she introduced Marianne Glendon, who then gave the first keynote talk. So any of those who are familiar with the brilliant faith-based scholars in the legal community, she's certainly right up there at the top. and that was just a phenomenal program. We had some BYU law school professors join them, and it was a great conference, and they did it again the next year, and then we decided they were having too much fun without the lawyers, and so during Joe Bentley's time, who was the next chair of the conference of the society, we actually then created the annual conference of the Law Society, and the first one was here in Washington, D.C., where we thought it was another fitting reason to come back here for our 25th anniversary. And the student part of the conference was in this room. We had Professor Bushman and some other folks that the students had invited, and it was a great weekend. And we've gone on every year since then to have an annual conference. I copied a few of the brochures. That was the one at Pepperdine, and then we went to Arizona. Christy was the co-chair over here. Great conference. We went to Harvard. We went out to Salt Lake. I'm missing Texas. Oh my gosh, I'm in so much trouble. I apologize to Darren and Gordon. We don't have Texas up here at SMU. We did Stanford last year, and then of course this year we're here in the nation's capital. One of the great things about the conference that has come from the conference is, you saw it this morning, with those 5 law school deans all sitting up here, hearing about the Law Society. It's been a tremendous opportunity for outreach. I remember just some really great engagement with Ken Starr out there in Pepperdine that first year. And I think, with the exception of maybe one of the conferences, the deans of all those schools have been very gracious hosts and have come and spoken to us, and we've had great experiences with them. Well, I need to hurry along here. Our next chair was Brent Belknap. Brent, you want to stand up? Give Brent a round of applause. One of the most significant things that happened to the Law Society while Brent was the chair was we revised the bylaws. Now, everybody that's a chair wants to revise the bylaws, so it's not like in and of itself that's a big deal, because they get revised constantly as a result. But in any event, Brent did something that we'd kind of tried to oversee the Law Society up till that point in time with a board of directors that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they had geographic oversight responsibilities as well as like committee responsibilities. And so Brent separated that all out and created what we call the Chapter Relations Council, which oversaw the chapters, and then created committees which dealt with things like conferences and technology and all of that. And that was a significant change for the Law Society. We also started at that time things like the Women in the Law Committee, where a greater emphasis on trying to develop more diversity in our leadership. And of course, the society continued to grow significantly during Brent's time. Our next chair was Nancy Van Slooten. Nancy, you want to stand up? Well, you've already heard that she was in it from the get-go. She was on the original board. She stuck with it. She's still sticking with it. And she was the first female chair of the national board. She created the history and media committees, tried to standardize a lot of things in the society, including publications, our logos, the way we project ourselves to the public. She created some videos to put online. We started to get into the technology age. We created an actual budget for the first time. We actually had some money thanks to the conference. And so we actually had a little bit more effort to be self-sustaining, with the recognition that as the society continued to grow, it was impossible for the BYU Law School to just continually expand its support of it. But don't tell Dean Rasband that. But in any event, so she instituted a lot of things that made that more scalable. And we also tried to strengthen our chapters by creating an outstanding chapters, quality chapter awards. Now, a lot of these things that I've attributed to a particular chair actually sort of bleeded over from one administration to the next. But I just want to conclude my little part about the history of the society by telling you that, for me, I've had the opportunity of being engaged since the society was created 25 years ago. As a young attorney, I remember gathering in a conference room in Washington, D.C. and having Brent Islerson tell us that we were going to have this chapter of a thing called the Reuben Clark Law Society. And I guess if the Law Society was a client, it would be a very significant multi-million-dollar client for me for the amount of time I put into it. But the reason for that is because I found that it gave me a real sense of purpose, a sense of purpose that sometimes wasn't always present in just practicing law for corporate clients. It gave me an opportunity to be engaged with people who had similar beliefs and believed that faith and religion were an important part of their lives, and that they could still be excellent attorneys while being faithful members of their religion. And so that I then have had the experience since that time of watching over and over again that play out in so many lives. And I recognize that the real reason that the Law Society is so special is because it allows lawyers to practice the teachings that they follow. And for those who believe in Jesus Christ, it allows them to practice teachings such as the ones we find in Matthew, where the Savior taught that those who followed him took care of the least of these, his brethren, that when they were thirsty, they found drink, and when they were hungry, they found food. When they were naked, they were clothed. And then I think of experiences like our chapter in Lima, Peru, going up on the mountainside to those who are living in their little shacks and taking clothing to them, as well as providing them with legal counsel and services. I think of the phrase, I was in prison and you came unto me. And I think of the good folks in Manila, Philippines, the Law Society chapter that goes and helps the women who are imprisoned unjustly and help get them out of prison and create what they call their mobile legal aid clinic, where they just go set up in a chapel somewhere and help the members of the church in that area with legal needs. And then I recognize that the Law Society is special because people get to exercise their faith in Jesus Christ using their legal skills. And I hope that the Law Society will always continue to be that, as well as a mentoring, networking, job-finding organization that it is. With that, I need to introduce our speaker, because you're thinking, why are we here waiting to hear Elder Holland all this time? And so I just want to briefly introduce him. Of course, you all know him as a member of the Quorum of the 12, an apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ. He's been the president of Brigham Young University, and he has a distinguished background in his education and in many other ways. But I thought to introduce him, I'd tell you a little story. Elder Holland and I go way back. I kind of hope he's forgotten this experience, but I was a student body officer at BYU when he was the president of the university. And the BYU at that time, we had that string of really great quarterbacks. For those of you that are BYU alum, you might recall that. And we were going to the Holiday Bowl every year, and that was just a really great tradition to go down to the Holiday Bowl and cheer on the team. And the BYU was almost an automatic because they'd win the conference every year. Well, they changed the date of the Holiday Bowl one year, and it landed smack in the middle of finals. Well, as a student body officer, I thought it was my obligation to tell the administration that, what were we here for? Was it for sports, or was it for sports there to support this, the presence and environment of the students on campus? So we really should let the students, go to the game. We should change finals. It's that simple. They didn't see it that way. Only the football team, the cheerleaders, and the band or whatever got to go. And so the rest of us got to stay behind and take finals. And so there was the public relations director of the student body officers at that time was a woman by the name of Susan Hollingsworth. Susan and I got this bright idea that we should send a telegram to Elder Holland while he was down in San Diego enjoying the sunshine, while we were back in Provo in the cold taking our finals. So we sent him a telegram, something to the effect of, "Don't come back, we've taken over, your office is no longer yours." Fast forward a few years, I'm graduating from law school. I'm walking across the stage to receive my diploma, and Elder Holland's on the stand shaking our hands as graduates of the BYU Law School. And he leans over and whispers to me something in reference to that telegram that I sent him 3 years before. And I was kind of stunned for a minute, like, what is he talking about? And then I went and sat down, and the experience has always stayed with me because I thought it probably epitomized exactly why he's such a great man. That he would be kind enough to remember a very small and silly experience and make reference to it to a young graduate, to show that we were all individuals and that we were all known, and that he, as the important president of the university, still cared about each one of us. And I think that's still one of his great hallmarks, as well as being a great speaker. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Elder Holland.